Welcome to the France 24 interview. Now, what if you knew a truth about someone that harbored dangers of such magnitude that it could be the key to future human survival? And now, what if that someone happened to be the President of the United States? And what if you were expected to keep your mouth shut about it? Well, that was one of the dilemmas facing Yale psychiatrist Bandy X. Lee, who was one of the contributors of essays to a controversial new book called The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. Now, Lee defied many of her own peers, Lee and her colleagues, arguing that their, quote, duty to warn the world about Trump's mental instability must supersede professional neutrality. And Bandy Lee joins me from New York. You're a forensic psychologist. You're also an expert in violence. Thank you so much for taking some time to be with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Dr. Lee, I want to ask you this. The ethical question is the first one. I know you grappled with it a lot. There is something called the Goldwater Rule in the American Psychiatric Association. I know you talk about this a lot. It basically says it's unethical to share a professional opinion about a public figure unless you have personally examined them. You made a conscious decision to sort of override that rule, to supersede it. Why, and what were the compelling reasons?
First of all, if I may, I'd like to make clear that I'm speaking on my own behalf and not representing the views of my institutions, that is Yale University, Yale School of Medicine, and Yale Department of Psychiatry. As for the ethical question, in fact, the Goldwater Rule is rather complex. I'm actually a proponent of the rule, but there are two parts to it. One is not to diagnose a public figure without having personally examined them and gotten consent from them. And secondly, it is when one is asked about a public figure, psychiatrists are actually encouraged to educate the public about relevant psychiatric matters in general terms. And actually, that is exactly what the book is doing. We do not diagnose, and we try to educate the public as to all the possible conditions that could be relevant, all the situations that tie into the dangerousness that we see. When we do speak about Mr. Trump in particular, we are referring to another ethical duty, which is the duty to warn, duty to report or to warn or to protect others or the public in the case of a danger, in the case of an emergency.
Could you, Dr. Lee, could you tell us more specifically, I'm curious about this myself, how do your contributors in the book, they found things ranging from narcissism to hedonism, fragile sense of self-esteem, lack of trust in himself. How do you detect and how do you, I won't say diagnose, but how do you detect these signs of behavior when you're not diagnosing in person?
So everyone wants a diagnosis. It would be irresponsible to say if without having all the information. But assessing danger does not require all information. It only requires enough information to raise alarms so that we call for a full evaluation. In terms of all the possible conditions that were outlined in the book, those are we try to be comprehensive in terms of the important possibilities. But there's also a fair amount we can know about the president.
Give us a few of those. Yeah. What are a few of the signs that you've seen?
Yes, so while we have not examined him in person, we have seen a lot of behaviors in public in response to situations in real time, over quite a bit of time. So actually, these behaviors or responses, incitement, of the public, effects on the public, these are kinds of things that we actually have a lot more information on him about than any patient.
Could I just jump in, Dr. Lee? What would you say, because the word the dangerous case, the word dangerous is in there. What would you say are among the more dangerous signs that are brought up by some of the psychiatrists writing essays for this book?
Yes, the essays cover a lot, but as an expert on violence, I can tell you that previous violence shows an indication for possible future violence, and he has already shown verbal aggressiveness, history of sexual assault, incitement to violence at his rallies, endorsement of violence in public speeches, and he's shown an attraction to violence and powerful weapons, as well as he has taunted hostile nations with nuclear power. All these things are signs of danger. And because assessing dangerousness is more about the situation than about the person, he is definitely in a situation where more of this could come and actually could escalate.
We make a lot of people have commented on the fact, obviously, he's the leader of the free world. He has his finger, Dr. Lee, on the nuclear button. How dangerous is that? Did you see a sign of danger of such a man having control over the nuclear codes? And what are they?
Yes, absolutely. That is our primary, most urgent concern, although not our only concern. He has shown characteristics that would make one certainly more precarious in such a position. He has shown impulsivity, recklessness, paranoia, or perceiving threat where it doesn't exist. He has shown having a loose grip on reality, where real consequences will matter very little. He's shown a lack of empathy, where devastation to millions of people may not be of great concern to him. He's shown rage reactions and a constant need to burnish a sense of power in response to what seems to be a pattern of inner insecurities and fear of feeling small or worthless, powerless.
That's quite a lengthy list there. It's interesting because you point out at one point, I believe perhaps in the book's introduction, that despite its title, this book is not really so much about Donald Trump as about, and I think your words were, the larger context that has given rise to his presidency. Mm-hmm. I read that and I was thinking, there's an insinuation there that if Donald Trump is mentally unstable, as a lot of the psychiatrists here suggest, the people who elected him might also have elements of mental instability. Am I reading too much into that?
No, that's precisely the situation that concerns us about the public mental health in general, in addition to its security and safety. Mr. Trump, while he is our greatest urgency at this time, having the signs of mental instability and impairment that he does. But there is also a reason why a mentally impaired leader was elected to this office. Even though he wasn't elected by a majority, he did have enough votes to be elected. And the book goes into some length as to how such a leader could have been attractive to the public, because a poor state of mental health would make one more vulnerable to those who are exhibiting signs of mental impairment, would shield them from seeing the signs of the dangers, and also there's a kind of mental mechanism that happens where you're attracted to pathology when there are elements of pathology that you're suffering from.
There's a sort of symbiosis at work here. I think there was one writer, maybe it was yourself, who said that, so Donald Trump is mad and the madness is catching. And I suppose that there is that sort of snowball effect when you have a leader such as this in the White House. Yes,
that was a publisher. Yes, we certainly are seeing effects of mental impairment spread. So pathology is spreading, as well as an effect of a poor state of mental health to begin with.
Dr. Lee, what can or should be done to screen presidential candidates before they assume office for possible mental instability? I believe there was a request made for Barack Obama to ask that Donald Trump be tested before he assumed office. That wasn't done, clearly. Mm-hmm. What should be done? Does the American Psychiatric Association have some sort of a plan?
Not the American Psychiatric Association. In fact, a lot of the psychiatrists are having issue with the association for actually increasing the demand for silence, going so far as to modify the Goldwater rule to something it had never been in the past and is not even written to be. They dramatically changed their interpretation as of March 16th of this year. But this book actually, although it has 27 mental health experts contributing to it, represents more than just us. It's actually a movement of sorts, because after I held a conference on the same topic, hundreds and hundreds of mental health professionals have gotten in touch with me, now in the thousands, and all concerned, all sharing our assessment. And it's really an unprecedented event that such a large number of mental health professionals have come forth about their concerns about any president of any party. Now, what we're proposing at this point is nothing very different from what I do as a mental health expert, as a forensic psychiatrist. I often do testify or give reports to the courts, other legal bodies, to state governments, and currently even to Congress, certain Congress members, to give our expertise, to allow for the legal or the political decision to be made. Now, we are recommending that an expert panel be set up for such screening for all presidential candidates and presidents to come, but it may be required that we need an emergency evaluation of this president.
And that's Dr. Bandy Lee. We've run out of time, but you and your fellow psychiatrists in a new book, Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, asserting your duty to warn Americans in the world about what you see as a mentally unstable president in the White House, and also calling for some action to screen perhaps political figures going ahead for mental instability. Thank you very much for being with us today here on The Interview on France 24.